My bag might be a little bit more of a trickling type bag instead of a true shaker bag, but I'm still super excited to be participating in the 5th sewing marathon for 2024. Hi, I'm Beth from Sew Country, and today's video is going to be a tutorial on the Quartz Clutch. This is from SewFlo, and I'm turning it into a shaker bag. I'm going to be completely honest. This is the first shaker bag I have ever sewn, and I did it yesterday. But it is really quick. It is very fun. This is the first time I've sewed this pattern, and I promise you I'm making a lot more of this pattern. This pattern is really quick, easy, and you can tell it's just adorable. This is the small. The pattern comes with a medium, which I'll be sewing today, and also a large. You can see the large and the small, quite a bit of difference. The medium will be right there in between the two. So let's go ahead and jump right in to talking about all the pieces we're going to need and how we're going to create these adorable little pouches. I'm going to tell you that I'm not adding a connector or D-ring. I did put on a zipper pull that has the option to clip a connector if you want to have a wristlet strap. But I'm basically making these for pouches, and yeah, mine's a little slow, but it's okay. It's still super cute. I love it. We do not need a lot of pieces to make this pouch. I'm going to use one zipper. I have it cut to the measurements given the pattern. I already have my zipper pull attached. I have one zipper tab. It is out of the jelly. I don't know where the jelly or the zippers came from, but they were just in my stash, and so I used them. So one zipper tab, one zipper with the pull on it. This is going to be that top piece that it connects the clear vinyl to the zipper, so you have one of these cut out of jelly. I'm going to save this for last. We have the back that is cut out of jelly, and it is just one of these as well. For this piece, for the original pattern, you would just have one piece of clear vinyl. Since I'm doing a shaker, evidently I have to kind of make a pocket for my little shaking supplies. So I have a layer of clear vinyl attached to this that is sticking. So you can see there is two pieces here. My printed clear vinyl comes from Jane R. Edwards. This clear vinyl here is a little bit thicker. The Jane R. Edwards is a TPU, so it's very soft. This is a thicker piece, and I think it actually came from Joann Fabrics. I don't know. I had a big roll of it. And so all I have right now is I just have these two clipped together. I had no idea how to sew a shaker bag, so I kind of had to look around at some other videos, kind of read some, educate myself. But the main thing we do with any shaker bag you make is you kind of just make a pocket for the shaker materials you're going to put in here. So I have that started right now by clipping it together. Before we start, and this will be the first thing we do, is we make this pocket. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I'm using for my shaker supplies, what I'm putting inside my shaker. So since this was a new to me concept, I did not want to go and spend a lot of money. I actually am trying to use up the supplies I have in my sewing room instead of buying more stuff. I know we all can relate to that. So I started thinking, what can I use? And I was looking for something small and uniform that I could put in there. I couldn't find anything. I didn't have any beads, didn't have any glitter, no confetti. So I kind of had to get creative. Fortunately though, I had this gorgeous roll of vinyl from Jen's Fabrics. Now this vinyl is kind of stiff. It is thin. It is a very thin vinyl. It's almost like a papery, I don't know. So it was really unique, and I loved it, and I used it in a pattern already once, but I had some left over. So what I did was I cut strips. You can see this line right here. I just cut it down this line here, and then I glued it to itself. So I just had it glued together. I used my Beacon 3-in-1 glue that I use for everything, and then I just put a weight on it for it to dry. After that, I cut these into little pieces. So here is my little shaker pieces. So my pieces are kind of big and they don't really shake as well as they should. They, like I said, they more trickle down, but that's okay. It was something I had in my house. I didn't waste any money on doing it. I'm using up the supplies, and that's what it's about for me right now. So if you have any vinyl that you like, you would want to glue it to itself if it had a backing that wasn't like this. Backing is kind of white, and I just didn't think that would be pretty on the inside. It wouldn't look horribly bad, but I really wanted the shiny on both sides. So you can do the same thing with vinyl. I also thought you could even cut up strips of a different color of jelly to put in there. You would probably want to cut the jelly a little bit smaller than what these are, because jelly might have a tendency to stick, where this is kind of slick or slippery. It might slide a little bit easier than the jelly would, but those are some things you can do to make a shaker bag without spending any extra money on buying supplies. So let's go ahead, and the first thing we're going to do is we are going to take this clear vinyl, the two pieces that are clipped together. You can tell that mine is not directional, so I don't really have to worry about it. I'm just going to leave an opening. You can leave the opening at the top or the bottom, whichever way you choose. What I will do is I'm just going to start, and I'll leave my opening there in the middle, and I'm just going to do 1/8 of an inch all the way around this, except for that opening. So you can back stitch if you want, but it's not too big of a deal because we're going to go ahead and sew this all together right away. So I'm not too worried about back stitching. Whenever you're working with clear vinyl, there's a couple of things to remember. First off, the more contact it has with your sewing machine and your foot, the more it tends to grab and things. If you are sewing on a domestic machine, you may have more problems. You might not. If you're sewing on an industrial, you probably definitely won't. But for me, I had several machines that I sewed on with clear vinyl that it just would not work. It would not go through at all. When I got this machine, it did much better. If your machine, and you can see it will pull it through all on its own. If your machine can't pull it through on its own, a couple of things you can do. Kim from Kayaskona Designs has told several people this. It's a great tip. You can use your sewing machine oil. They actually sell a specific oil called, I think, Sewer's Aid. But even your sewing machine oil, if you just put a little bit on here, it'll help it to slip and slide without causing any damage, of course, to your machine or your clear vinyl. You could also get a Teflon foot if you need it, or you could use parchment paper. If you use parchment paper, you'd actually have the parchment paper laying directly on your vinyl. You could even sew through it and then just tear it at the end. I do not recommend using tissue paper because you would have to get tweezers to pick it out of the seam. It's very, like, it just falls apart and leaves a thread. But for me, my machine can pull it through without any problems. One reason I think it does is because I have a very skinny foot, so there's not like a lot of surface tension there, and so it pulls it through easier. I could also raise the pressure on my foot if I was having trouble. Those are some things you can try to do if your machine is struggling with sewing clear vinyl. Lots of times if the machine is struggling with sewing it, I will just lift it up so it has the least amount of contact possible. That tends to help it as well. Once you're sewing on the jelly or the zipper, you're not having a lot of trouble. And though this pattern is really good for not requiring a lot of sewing directly on the clear vinyl, it's just where I'm doing this as a shaker bag, I have to sew all the way around it. I've also noticed that if I go slower, it does better than if I go fast. So if you're just trying to push your foot down and go as fast as it can, it's not going to work as well as if you go slow. So take your time, go slow with this, and don't rush it, and you'll get a much better sew. So you can see I have a little pocket here. Here's my little clear pocket. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to dump these in here. I have found, because I've sewed 2 of these, I sewed one last night, one this morning, and this one now, is that I really don't want it to go all the way down to the bottom here. Where mine is a little thicker, it doesn't want to move as much, so I'm going to try to not get it down there. I did realize that I could just pick these seams if it gets too far down. Because I don't want to sew it in, I can move it, so that is an option too if you have that problem. Now, if you would be working with something like glitter, of course you would want to use a funnel so you don't make a huge mess. But since I'm not, mine can just be dumped right in there. I'm going to spread these around a little bit, but I'm going to try to keep them away from this seam. I know that they'll shift around a little, but that will just be easier for me to keep them outside the seams. So now that I have those in there, all I'm going to do is finish closing this up. And then we'll just complete the pattern as we normally would. At this point, we're back to sewing just as if it wasn't a shaker bag. So in the actual pattern, that one's stuck up there. Come down, come down. There we go. Okay, so in the actual pattern, what you do is you start with your zipper with the pull on there, and the pattern tells us that we measure down a set amount, and we're going to make marks there, and then we're going to fold down these edges to make a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to go ahead and make my marks now off camera, and then I'll show them to you, and then I'll show you how I fold down those corners. So there is my marks right there within the seam allowance, and all I do is I separate these. And right where that mark is, I'm going to put my fingernail right there. And on the back, I'm going to use that to push up so that it bends and creates that 90-degree angle. So that's how I do it. I'll go ahead and add a clip. Sometimes I'll add glue if I'm not in front of my sewing machine. Like say I'm cutting in the living room while watching a movie or something, I will add a little bit of glue to help. But since I'm right here at my machine, I'm not going to do that. And then I will just sew it down instead of gluing it. When you do your second one, you definitely want to make sure you keep them even. You would not want these to be uneven, so make sure you take the time when you're done to look at them to make sure everything looks good. I can tell that mine look pretty good. I'm okay with that. What I do then is I take it over to the sewing machine. I'm going to base this in place, so I'm going to be right up against the edge of the zipper tape, so about 1/8 of an inch away. Once I get over both pieces of the zipper tape that fold, then I'll do some back stitching, come up to the top, and back stitch again. Now there is no need to sew over the teeth, and sometimes if you do sew over the teeth, it can cause it to shift. And you want to, at the end, to still have it that perfect 90-degree angle. On the second side, it's a little bit trickier because I still suggest you sew it this way. Good thing is that you're just doing that basting stitch, so it's not like you have to worry about having a proper seam allowance. You just get right up against the edge. Make sure you're holding those teeth down at that 90-degree angle. Back stitch. And there you go. I'm going to go ahead and trim up my threads and trim up the edges of the zipper tape. On this pattern, since I'm working with clear vinyl and jelly vinyl and my edges, I'm going to leave them raw. I want to make for sure that I take the time to trim all the threads as we go. You will not have a lining. Even though the pattern, just so you know, the pattern does have an option for a lined version, I'm not doing it this one. So I want to make for sure that I have everything trimmed and all the threads neat, because there won't be a lining to hide all these in. If you're someone that likes to burn your edges on your zipper tape, I definitely would think that would be a good time to do them now after you have these steps finished. I'm just going to do a quick check just to make for sure that my zipper tape is going to be able to stay out of these seam allowances on this, and it will, so I'm good there. Take your zipper tab, just simply fold it together. With my jelly, I don't have a right or wrong side, so I'm just folding it in half. I'm going to slip it right onto the edge of that zipper tape. I'm going to sew it 1/8 of an inch away. Making sure I'm straightening up my tape. Everything looks good. Definitely back stitch here. Once again, I'm going to trim everything up because I know nothing will be hidden in this one. Let's set our zipper aside for just a minute. Pull out that vinyl. Make sure it is right sides up. If yours is printed, if yours is clear, it doesn't matter. Grab out that top piece, that little top band, and lay it down on that clear vinyl. Now, my jelly, it's no right, wrong side. If yours does, lay it right sides together. So if you have a printed jelly, lay it right sides together with your clear vinyl. Add a few clips here on the top. And on this, we are going to sew with the seam lines given in the pattern, or we're going to sew all the way across from edge to edge. So when Jill suggested that we do a shaker marathon, I immediately said yes. I was in, and I had no idea what really a shaker bag was. I had seen some, but I had never sewn one. I really didn't know kind of like the concept behind it. So because I didn't want to look like a fool and embarrass myself, I tried to do some research. I am kind of uncool. I am old and I'm not like up with the current fads. So I'm like, oh, shaker bag. The only shakers I know is the religious group from like the 1700s. You know, the ones that got the name Shakers because of their very ecstatic practices during their religious gatherings. So I was like, what? What's that talking about? So I'm like looking up the history of the shaker bag. Side note, it is not related to the shakers of the 1700s, in case you were confused as well. Although they did create the seed packets, the shaker seed packets. The seed packets, they're in the envelopes, little paper envelopes that we still use today. They are the ones who came up with that concept. Before that point, all of the seeds were just in bulk, put in bulk in cloth bags. So they came up with that concept. So that's kind of the first shaker bag, right? A shaker seed bag. Anyway, I just flipped up that top band. I'm leaving the seam underneath, and now I'm just going to top stitch an 1/8 of an inch away from that seam. And so I was hoping that that's where it came from, but it wasn't. And so then I thought, oh, it's probably the shaker bag came about because of shake and bake. I mean, obviously shake and bake. That was in what, the 1960s when shake and bake came about. So I thought, okay, I'll look up the history of shake and bake. I'm sure that's where the shaker bag came from. You know, you get it, it's in a bag, you shake it. No, that is not where it came from either. Although the original shake and bake was just cracker crumbs in a bag. Who bought that? I don't know. It was just breadcrumbs and cracker crumbs. That's all it was. So that's kind of weird. But anyway, oh, and also, did you know that Shake and Bake no longer provides the plastic bags in the little box anymore? Now it's just the seasoning and the breadcrumbs because they're trying to be more environmentally conscious. I learned so much trying to figure out the shaker bag. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and trim up all the threads now that we got this. And if you have a thread that gets kind of hooked around there, definitely go ahead and trim it up because it could show. So this is how it looks from the wrong side. This is the right side. Let's go ahead and take our zipper now and place it right sides down. And you are going to center your zipper. Your zipper should have plenty of room on either side for that seam allowance. So anyway, my quest to figure out the shaker bag was never really found. If anybody knows the history, I tried to find out like who did the first shaker bag and what their thought process was. I even tried to look on YouTube and couldn't find it. For me though, what I did was I found Lauren Mormino. She did a video. She's one of the people that, like, if I need to figure something out, I will go to her channel and see, because I think she's like done all the videos. So she had a shaker tutorial and I watched it and kind of got the understanding of how to sew a shaker bag, and that's where I am today, sewing this shaker bag with no real knowledge of how it began, but a lot of knowledge about other random things that will help me none in my life. Just random facts. I'm just sewing down this zipper, just on the zipper. I'm not sewing from edge to edge because there's no point. After I sew this zipper with the seam allowance in the pattern, I will flip it up and then I will top stitch again on that top band. Both times we top stitch, it's on that top band. I love it when a pattern's like that, when it's kind of consistent. I think it just looks really nice like that. I'm checking every step for threads. Usually I don't trim any threads until the end, but on this one I really want to make for sure I do it at every step. Okay, so this is what we have. This is what it looks like. So what you're going to do is you're going to flip that seam down. It's going to cause your zipper to pop up. You'll have a little bit of like a fold here. So at this point, what we will do is we will top stitch from side to side here, all on that top band. While I'm sewing it, I'm going to take the time to make sure that that seam stays underneath. Now, I can even see under mine, but if you can't see under yours, just use your fingers to feel and kind of make sure that it's where it needs to be. But go slow. Use an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance here. Anytime we do top stitching, we do that. When you're sewing on the jelly, you shouldn't have any problem no matter what machine you have, because jelly is more kind of like a silicone. It's very smooth, it's not sticky, it's very fun to sew on actually. Okay, this is what we have so far. We have the zipper top attached. We have everything top stitched. This is our front pretty much. Now what we do is we only have this one piece left, or at least I do. If you were going to do a D-ring, you would attach it too. I'm not doing that. So this is my last piece to add. Love this pattern. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip everything over, and I'm going to take the sides and match them up first. Make sure my sides are even, and I'm just going to pull up that zipper tape and start clipping it to the top. I'm actually going to sew it this way from the wrong side of the front, just so I can make sure that the bulky parts of this bag don't get in the way while I'm sewing it. And again, I'm going to sew with that same seam allowance given in the pattern, just from on the zipper tape. I'm not going to go past the zipper tabs. At this point, when I top stitch, I will, but I won't here. This is what we have at this point. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this up, and we're going to top stitch on the back just like we did the front here. So we are going to flip that seam down, and I'm going to pull up my zipper so it doesn't keep opening there. So I want to kind of push that seam down this way, and that causes the zipper tape to go up. You can't tell it's going up because we have it the way we have it with this bag right now, but if it was unattached to the other side, you'd be able to see it. But basically, you want that seam to go under the back of the bag, and I'm just adding these clips to kind of help it stay in place. I'm going to top stitch now on that back jelly piece. I'm going to top stitch from edge to edge because I want to lock in those seam allowances that I just folded down. So let's start 1/8 of an inch back stitch and go all the way across. Again, watching that seam allowance, holding everything tight, and making sure we get a really nice stitch. Whenever we have a pattern like this where there's just a few components, it's really a great time to let the stitching and those small details kind of take place and be center stage. So this is what we have so far. I'm going to open my zipper, trim up any threads I see one more time. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to take this bottom edge of the back and match it to the bottom edge of the front. Your zipper will not be at the top right now at this point, and that's what we want. We're just matching up the bottoms. I'm going to add a few clips. Make sure, of course, your sides are matching up too. And what you're going to do is you're going to sew across this bottom with the seam allowance given in the pattern. We're going to sew all the way across, back stitching from one edge to the other. This is such a fun pattern. I can see how addictive it is and play around more with this pattern. I think it's a really fun, cute pattern. This is what we have at this point. This next step is probably what would be considered the trickiest part. You're going to go ahead and open this up all the way. So go ahead and open your zipper. And what you want to do is so after we open the zipper, we're going to push that seam allowance to the jelly side. So we still have it wrong sides out. We're going to open everything up. And I'm going to be sewing on the jelly back. But I want to make for sure that that seam allowance that we just sewed is directly underneath it. I'm going to do it about 1/8 of an inch away. We're going to make sure we start from the open end of the zipper. So you can see how my bag opens completely up. We're sewing towards the zipper tab. So it's going to start out real easy and simple, and you're like, oh, this is easy, yay, lots of fun. And then it gets a little tricky. It's not hard. This is my third one. Definitely going to keep making this pattern, so it's not anything that I'm like, oh, this is such a struggle. It's not. It's just you got to be a little bit careful as you get closer to the zipper tab. So I'm going slow. I'm keeping my finger right there on the seam, pushing it down, making sure everything's staying nice and flat. I'm having to push back the zipper and the opening. You can see it's getting a little bit tighter. The bag is almost like flipping up the way I'm holding it, so I want to make for sure that the stitches are still like being even, like I'm not putting too much pressure, that it's not moving through the feed dogs. Almost there. Keep letting it roll up so you can see how everything's rolling up. That's the best way to do it. Back stitch again, and you're done with that. Now at this point we are going to, I start with these tabs at the top. I match up the tabs. We want the zipper at the top. In the previous step when we sewed at the bottom together, the zipper was not at the top, but now we want it at the top. That's going to give us a little bit of that jelly on the front poking through, and that's what we want, that little bit of contrast there. So I'm going to clip the tabs first, making sure that my zippers look good too, and they did, they matched, because I knew it would matter. I've been trying to find the best way to get rid of threads, and I found this little scalpel, and I've been using it and liking it. I think it makes me feel like super cool to use a scalpel, like, oh, I'm in the medical field, but I'm really not. I'm just using a scalpel that I found on Amazon to cut threads, and probably won't end up hurting myself with it before too long. So once you have both of the side seams matched, what you're going to do is you are going to sew down both of these with the seam allowance in the pattern. Now, the designer tells us we don't start at the main top. She says to start at that row of stitches that you just top stitch. Sounds good to me. That's what I'm going to do. So we're going to do that. So you won't actually have stitches going over the top. It'll just be right there connecting that row of top stitching. I back stitch and I go all the way down, back stitch again. Repeat for the other side. What you want to do now is I always like to kind of soften these curves just a little bit, and so I trim it down just a little, get rid of that basting stitch there if I can, and just kind of round the curve so that it's not like a sharp peak there. It's not too big of a deal, but I just do that. That's what I do. If you can't get rid of all your basting stitches, like I can't there at the top, it would just be too much taken off, and I don't want to trim too close so that it kind of makes the seam weak. So I won't do that, but again, I'm just going to kind of curve that edge a little bit. You definitely want to make sure you trim up every single thread possible. After you trim down the sides, make sure everything's good, trim up the threads, then you just open the zipper and start pushing it out. Now the jelly and the TPU vinyl are really thin and easy to push out, but where we have that extra clear vinyl, the cheap kind from like Joann Fabrics, it's a little bit stiffer. So it takes a little bit more time. So I'll just go slow with this, and then I will use my stiletto to very carefully, my stiletto is a blunt edge stiletto, to poke out those corners there at the bottom. So you can see I just slowly poke out those corners, go real easy on them. You definitely don't want to tear the jelly or make a hole in anything. I come up to this zipper tab and I just can use my fingers pretty much to push that out and to get it to come nice. I'm just going to use this stiletto to kind of poke out that zipper tab and get that corner out really good. If you feel like you need to, you can use your clips. The clips like this, if you have these, I get these from Amazon, and they just kind of help if you feel like you need to press down your sides and everything. Like on this side, I might need to press it down a little bit. But honestly, I like it a little poofy. You can see how big and wide this opens. I kind of like that it's not just a flat pouch. Now, I have some of these pieces over there that are getting in the way. I need to get them to shake back to the middle. They're stuck. They're stuck. So that's going to make mine a little bit weird on the side there. But other than that, it's perfectly adorable. Let's look at all three sizes together so you can see. This pattern, while it's not designed to be a shaker bag, it is perfect to make shaker pouches. This is a great pattern, and you can see how quick and easy this pattern is to do this. The pattern is from SewFlo, that is from Brittany Edwards, and it comes with 3 sizes, and there's also a version to make this a lined pouch, which is really cool. My vinyl, the clear vinyl, the stripes, is from Jane R. Edwards. I will have the link to both the pattern and to where to get the vinyl. I also have a discount code to use with that vinyl and on the entire website, honestly. Thank you so much for watching another tutorial. Like I said, this is the 5th sewing marathon. We will have at least one every month, or at least that's the plan. We love doing these. We love hanging out. We hope that you guys enjoy having a day just chatting with other people in the sewing community. If you have any suggestions for patterns you'd like for us to do a marathon on, let us know. If you would like to join us on doing the marathons, if you have a YouTube channel, definitely reach out to us. Other than that, I hope today in your sewing room that you have the time to sew something new, to educate yourself on a new type of technique in the sewing community. And I also hope you're able to use some of the materials you have in the sewing room in a new, unique, creative way. Thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks for everybody who's sewing along. Definitely a huge thank you to SewFlo Brittany for letting me do this pattern. I really enjoy it and I appreciate it. And I can't wait to make more of these. I hope everyone has a great day, and I hope you guys continue to watch the other tutorials. I know I'm excited to see the other ones that are going to be playing all day today too. Thanks so much and have a wonderful day.